Welcome. Today's video will be about the inventory taking process in NDSS. Before we can start the inventory cycle for the current year, there are some prerequisites we have to make sure that they are in place. Before you start, we have to make sure that the reports and the print settings are correct. In this print screen, we see that the copies are set to 1. If this is not done, automatically, by default, the copies are set to 0. The problem is if they are not set to 1, 2 or 3, depending how many copies you would like. If it stays 0, then nothing will be printed. The inventory cycle, the first counting, the second counting, these actions are processed only when the documents are printed. So, as I mentioned, if the copies are set to 0, nothing will be printed and the counting will not start. The next one is check if the previous cycle has been completed and the new cycle, so the new year, is active. In this print screen we will see that the active year is 2023. There is a flag here, current cycle flag, meaning the 2022 cycle has been closed. In the demonstration, I will show you how to open up a new one for 2024 as an example. Just to make sure that if you would like to start a new inventory cycle, you have to complete the previous cycle. Closing an inventory cycle always is done with the last step, the outstanding count. The system will consider all the warehouse locations or stock numbers which have not been counted and will print out an outstanding count for these items. After the entry of the outstanding count, the cycle will be closed for that year. So, no matter how many badges you create, the final count to complete the cycle has to be done with the outstanding count. The inventory taking process, an overview. NDSS allows you to create a planning guide in the Echo 009 Papa 01. This planning guide is optional. The system will create an inventory taking strategy where it does a calculation on how many badges and how many items to count to make sure that you have an equal workload throughout the year. As mentioned, this is optional and not mandatory. You can use this planning guide as a reference or a guide to create the actual badges. The next step is the badge creation. To create badges in order to plan smaller inventory tasks during the inventory cycle. Now, an audit team would like to see that you are creating multiple badges throughout the year to make sure and to show that you are, let's say, in control of your warehouse. I strongly recommend to create multiple badges. After the badge creation is done, you will go to the first counting list. Printing of the first counting list will block the warehouse for the selected items in the batch. It will also print 3 documents. Part 1, a control list. This is a list the PAO or the warehouse supervisor should keep and not share with the people or the staff that are doing the counting. Then there will be a part 2, the first counting list. This list will have a box where an entry of the count can be done and a document with the inventory batch. Another reason to create multiple badges is that, like mentioned, it will block the warehouse for the selected items in the batch. So the larger the batch, the more items will be blocked and cannot be issued out from the warehouse during the time the first and the second counting has not been completed. After the first counting, we have to go and do the entry of the warehouse count. This is the actual process where we are entering the amount that has been counted. This can be a surplus or a minus amount. Only when the entry of the warehouse count is completed, the items which are not in discrepancy will be unblocked from the batch. That means if the amount is the same as the amount in the control list, so the actual amount in the system, the items will be unblocked and can be issued out again from the warehouse. Items in discrepancy will go to the second counting list for another counting. I recommend that the second counting will be carried out by another staff member. When the entry of the warehouse count is done, items in discrepant, surplus or minus, meaning they are not okay on the first counting list, a second counting list has to be printed, where preferably another staff member will carry out a second counting. After the second counting, we have to do the entry of the warehouse count of the second counting. After the second counting and the entry is done, the surplus items will go on to an adjustment list. They will be automatically added to your inventory of the warehouse. And if they are in discrepant, in minus, they will have to be processed on a ROS document. Another remark I would like to make here is that if there is a surplus item and it is considered as a fixed asset, I would coordinate with your financial community that you just added a fixed asset to your inventory of the warehouse, just to make sure that these items will be added to the fixed asset register. So this PowerPoint slide can be used as a reference when you are conducting the inventory taking process in NDSS. In the demonstration, I will show you step by step all the actions which are shown here in this slide. Before I start with the demonstration, I cannot express enough some recommendations I mentioned earlier is to create multiple badges to plan your inventory throughout the year. Then a remark, a surplus is also seen as a discrepancy. And the first counting and the second counting should be conducted preferably by separate staff members. Another recommendation I would like to give you is to make sure that you know which items to be counted and which locations you have in your warehouse, not only for yourself but also for any newcomer that will work in your warehouse, is to design a layout, a floor plan of your warehouse. As an example, this could be a very simplistic overview of your warehouse. You see the shelving, shelf 01, 02, 03, 4, 5 and 6. Within these shelves I have separate locations to in detail express what warehouse locations they have. This is just an example. Then you have a receipt area, a dispatching area, an area where you are temporary storing your received items, your received goods, before they actually get a warehouse location. Then I would have a shelf separately for all the items that have to be shipped before they are shipped out. This is the location where you will put them, or before they are going to be picked up. Another recommendation is to separate your RES4 items to be written off and the items from a ROS document. That means I have RES4 items to be written off, and I have items which are already recorded on a report of survey before they are handed over to a property disposal officer. Strongly recommend to separate the RES4 and the ROS area. By looking or having such a floor plan, staff members which are new to your organization or any other person that needs to do a warehouse check or needs to find items, by looking at this floor plan, they know where to search and where to go for the different items. For the demonstration, we are using the training database with fictive data. We have to go to Echo, Stock Management Inventory Taking, where I have the option to go to the Planning Guide, Batch Creation, Entry of Warehouse Count. Then I have my print options, my first counting list, my second counting list. I can reprint counting lists. I can print a list with items in stock but no location. And I have warehouse location labels. As mentioned, before we start with the inventory taking process, as mentioned in the inventory taking process slide, we have to make sure that the printer and the settings of the printer for the reports are in place. For this, we go to Procedure Tailoring, Reports, and I will filter on the Echo application. Here I see that all the copies by default are set to 0. Now I have to make sure that at least one copy, you can print multiple, but at least one copy has to be printed to start the process of the first counting list. So in order to change the quantity of the copies to be printed, you have to double click on the different reports. For example, inventory taking, double click. Number of copies 1, save, and I go out. Now you will see that the copy has been changed from 0 to 1. And I will do this for all the reports which I would like to have a printout. As mentioned, the first counting list has to be printed and the control list as well. So if you're not sure, of course you could select all of them, but we have to just make sure that all the reports that we need are printed. This normally only has to be done once. If you're already working in an organization which has all the setups, normally this will be in place. But it's always good before you start the inventory cycle to check if the copies are not set to 0. If they are set to 0, nothing will be printed and the first counting, the cycle will not start. This one, items with stock no, but no location. This is the printout where you can see that items, you have a quantity high in stock, but you don't have a warehouse location. Yes. So make sure that the quantities are at least set to 1 or more copies, and then you can start with the next process of the inventory taking. The next prerequisite I mentioned on the slide was to go to echo 08, the frequency of inventory taking. Here you can see all the previous inventory cycles. This is a training database, so there is no recording of a previous cycle. I have to go to insert to create a new year, a new inventory cycle, 2024. It's the current cycle, the starting day of the cycle. If it would be the 1st of January, it's the 1st. Duration of the cycle, 1 year. And I save. If I now go out of this screen, you will see now that my current cycle is 2024, starting on the first day of the year, and it's a 1 year duration cycle. So now I've fulfilled all the prerequisites to start my inventory cycle. I have the printer set up and I have the report set to at least 1 copy. And my current cycle is 2024 and all the previous cycles have been closed. Now I will demonstrate the planning guide. Double click. Here I can choose between the expendability code, either if it's a consumable, an XB item, or a non-expendable, for example an asset, or an item which you would like to have recorded as a capital item, ND. Now in this scenario I would like to see all the items. Imagine that your warehouse locations start with 01, Alpha 01, Bravo 03. That's my first warehouse location. And I would like to make a plan for the complete warehouse. Now this is a training database. I don't have that many warehouse locations recorded, but my last warehouse location is 05, Alpha 01, Bravo 02. So this is my first location and this is my last location. Then the stock positions, I want the system to consider 7 stock positions. So it will take into consideration res 1, res 2, res 4, etc. Then the year of cycle is the current one, 2024. And then I go to File and Print. I can print and then I have to save the document, or the document will be printed depending if you have a printer installed. So I press on print and then it will show you that I have non-expendable batches 4. Okay. Since I don't have a printer installed, it will ask me to store it. Planning Guide 2024. I will store it on my desktop for now. And I say save. And now the planning guide is saved. To show you the planning guide if it is printed, This is how it looks like. It says planning guide for cycle 2024. And you see that the system automatically did a calculation dividing in weeks, 1, 14, 26, and 39. And it shows me the number of items to count. It also showed me from which location to what location I need to count. So if I would have multiple items to count in that week, it will show me from 01, Bravo 03, but it could also be if I have more items in that shelf or in that planning guide, it could even be 01, Alpha 01, and then Bravo 05, for example. And then I would have 2 or 3 items to count. Again, it also shows me I have no locations for 373 items. As I mentioned, this is a training database, so I only recorded a few warehouse locations. As mentioned, this planning guide is optional. You don't have to use it, but it could give you a reference on how many items to count and how many weeks you would need to have an equal workload. The next step will be the actual batch creation. To start the batch creation, we go to Echo 009 Papa 02, batch creation modification, double click, and you will see all the batches which are created for the current cycle year, which is for the moment 0. Then we go and select the insert button. Here I have the option to choose between stock number or warehouse location. That means I can search by stock number from and to which stock number I want to count. In this video I will show you how to do the count by warehouse location. So I will start with the location 01 Alpha 01 Bravo 03, and I would like to finish this batch with 02 Bravo 02 Alpha 01. All the expandability codes, I can make a differentiation if I want. All the different accounts, so account Bravo, Delta, account 1. All the accounts can be selected for the inventory batches. The inventory taking year is 2024 and the inventory taking week. So let's assume this would be the 4th week of the year. In January, I would say week number 4. And now I will ask the system to count the number of items. So 2 items will be selected for this batch. Okay. And I say save. And now you will see that for the year 2024, I have batch serial number 1 for inventory week 4. So this is the creation of the first batch. Like I mentioned earlier, it is preferred to create multiple batches throughout the year. So let's create another batch. Again, I go to the insert button. From. So now I will choose a different location. Inventory year 2024, and I want to do this batch in calendar week number 10. Count the number of items again. It will calculate 2 items, okay, and I save. And now I have 2 batches. And this is how you continue in creating all the badges throughout the year. So I have 2 badges now, one for inventory week number 4 and one for inventory taking week number 10. After you have created all the badges throughout the year, although you could create additional badges anytime you would like to do so, let's assume these are the 2 badges I want to continue and start with. The next step would be the first counting list. So this is just a plan again for week number 4 and week number 10. Today I will print the first counting list. Again, this will print 3 documents: the control list, the first counting list, and the inventory schedule. Here, the first counting list, I can choose between the 2 badges I created earlier. I open up, and then by processing the print, I'm going to start and initiate the counting cycle. So I started the process by printing the documentation, the control list, the first counting list, and the inventory schedule list to show you how they look like. So this is your inventory taking list part 1 control list, and on the right you will see the quantity which need to be available. So these items are serialized, as you can see, and the total amount should be 10. Same for the second item, serial number 2 on the list with stock number. 10, a total amount of 10 serial numbers will be available and have to be counted for. This is the control list, including the serial numbers available. Now, the list you will have to give to your staff members to count is the part 2 first counting list. And here you will see that again the serial numbers are recorded on the document, the location is there, and now you have to tick the box if the serial number has been counted for, and if not, you can say 0 or you cross out the box. Okay, so you need to check the serial number, and if the serial number is found, you have to make a mark here in the counting box. If the serial number is not matching, that means there is a discrepancy. Although the amount is the same, the serial number should be recorded. So if the serial number is different, this is a discrepancy. So this is how you are recording the actual count with a quantity, or you tick it off saying yes, serial number found, or a cross if not found. And the third document is the inventory taking list with the batch number. As mentioned, the control list stays with the PEO or the warehouse supervisor, and the actual counting list will be issued out to a staff member to do the actual count. After that, when the list comes back with the quantities mentioned on the document, we go to entry of warehouse count. Double click. Automatically it will give you all the batches which have been processed and the printed documents came out of the printer. By double clicking on the batch, now it will show me the batch and all the items within the batch. Here the count. If the tick box is black as it is now, the count has not been performed. By clicking once, you are confirming that you have seen the serial number, that it has been counted. By clicking twice, you did the count and the item has not been found. You could save, but the best thing to do is to complete the cycle for that count. So in this scenario, I will make sure that I have some discrepancies and I save. What will happen now is that the items which have not been found, so the boxes which are empty, these items will go automatically to the second counting list. The next step is to go to the second counting list and print. And now it will print all the documents which are needed to do the second count. This is the second counting list. And again, I have a tick box here. You have to print it. To show you the printed documents, you can see here now, second counting list. Again, you see the item, the description, the serial numbers to be counted, the tick box to tick yes or no or cross to verify if the item has been found. And the second document, what was printed, is again the batch number of the second counting list. Again, the second counting list, I would recommend that other staff members will do the second counting list with a fresh pair of eyes. After the counting list is returned, you go to the entry of warehouse count and you will see that if you go to the second counting, I now have to verify if the items are found during the second counting. And in this scenario, I have found all the items besides the last one. And the last one, which I didn't find, will go on to a separate document and the item will be added to the inventory if it's a surplus, but in this case it's a discrepancy, so the item will go on a discrepancy report. Save. The system will ask me some discrepancies appear. Please check the discrepancy report, which has just been printed. And do I want to accept the discrepancy and continue? Yes. and now the batch has been completed. So the first counting, the entry of the warehouse count of the first counting, then the second counting list, and then finally the entry of the second count was done with one discrepancy. So this is how you do the creation of batches: the first counting, the entry of the warehouse count, the second counting, the entry of the second counting, and then you will have a discrepancy report with a surplus or minus. In this scenario, I showed you how that you will have a discrepancy. I will show you now the document which will be printed for the discrepancy. So the discrepancy which has been recorded in the system has been printed in the report. You see that the item is serialized. You see a stock number, a description, a NATO accounting number, a serial number, a quantity, and a remark not found during the inventory. So this document you have to keep as a record, and from this you will have to do a report of survey in the property, plant and equipment asset management module, where you are able to create a ROS coming from an inventory taking cycle. So when this is done, we finalize the first batch. All these items will now be released and are available for issuing out of the warehouse again. We can run and look at statistics. I can look at the batch inquiry. You will see that I have 2 batches, and I can see that one of them has been completed with the Julian date. I can look at the inventory status, and you will see here that I have counted some items. Yes, so here you can see already counted, which is 0.53% of the inventory of the non-expendable items. And for the expendable items, we did not do a count yet. So to be scheduled here, meaning I have 98.96% left to be counted for this year, for this cycle. So now I will create a batch for an item which is not serialized, so I can show you how to do the entry of the count. So the batch creation, again, insert from location 04 alpha 01 01 to location 04 alpha 02 01. Again, I will select all expendability codes, all accounts, inventory year 2024, and for the scenario, I will use calendar week number 20. Count number of items. This should give me normally 2 items. Yes. Okay. Save the batch. And it's done. Now I go to my first counting list. I see the batch. These are my locations from and to. Print. It will print the documents with the 2 items to be counted for. the control list, the count list, and the batch number document. Okay, that means now I initiated the process of doing the inventory count with the first counting list printing. Documents are printed. Then I issue out the documents, the count list to a staff member. The control list will stay with the PAO or the warehouse supervisor. And when the list is returned by the staff member who does the counting, you will go to the entry of the warehouse count. Now the entry of the warehouse count, again, shows me batch number 3. And here you can see the difference if an item is not serialized. Now, this is why it's important not to show the control list, because the control list will show you the quantity to be counted and what the system is recorded. Here you enter the amount which you have counted, not knowing the actual amount in the system. So here I will say 200. And here I will say I found 10. If these quantities are not matching, automatically these discrepancies, surplus or minus, will go to a second counting list. I save. Then I go to the second counting list. As you can see, there is a batch. I print. Okay. Second count for batch number 3. Now I go to the entry of the warehouse count for the second counting. And one item was found in discrepancy. And after the second counting, I identified 100. Save. Do I want to accept? Yes. And you will see here that it's an adjustment because serviceable 50 and it has been an adjustment value of up, meaning we found more than the actual quantity recorded in stock. So now I have two discrepancies, one minus, one surplus. The last item is a surplus. So if I look at the document, you will see totally number of items adjusted, one item, 50 each. That means I just added 50 each of paper DIN A4 to the inventory. If I go back to NDSS, it will show me that I will have a movement of 50 here from inventory taking. The opening was 50, I added 50 with my inventory taking, surplus, and now the final amount is 100 in stock. So this is your adding of a value after you did the inventory and you found extra items. To finalize the inventory cycle, I have no further batches planned for this year. I go to the outstanding count. And after saving, it will show me 948 items to be counted for. This will give me a report, again, a control list, a counting list, and a document. There is a warning here. After the final count, it will close my current cycle year and it will create a batch for all the items not counted. Do you wish to continue? As you can see, it will now print documents for 948 items to be counted. Stock number line items. Okay. Again, 3 documents will be printed. And then you can start the inventory, and after that you can start the entry of the warehouse count. So you go to the entry of the warehouse count. What you will notice here that the batch serial number is 999. This is the serial number for the final batch. So every cycle year will finish with batch number serial number 999. So here you will see you will have 960 items to count. You can see this is a very big batch. You can start entering the amount counted, etc. Yes, and you can even save in between, meaning you have finished the first 4 serial numbers of that counting list, and then you continue like this. The items in minus will go to the second counting. The items in surplus will also go to the second counting. And after the entry of the second count, you will have an addition list or a discrepant list, which needs to be handled in a reporter survey. Same procedure as the previous badges. Yes, so if you have an empty box here, you have to provide a value. If you have a box like this, you have to provide, have you seen the serial number? Yes, no, or not counted. And this is how you do the final count. After that, the inventory cycle will be closed. When you have closed the inventory cycle, you continue by going to PAM and create a reporter survey inventory taking, and you will give this to the financial accounting officer and the PAO to sign for all the discrepancies found during the inventory taking process, and it will follow the normal process of the write-off. The items that are found extra will go to the add list and will be added to your inventory. And again, make sure that if it's a fixed asset that you are adding to your inventory, coordinate or communicate with your financial community. To recap what we have learned in this video is to set up the prerequisites, meaning the print of the documents. The copies have to be at least a quantity of 1 or more, so the copies should not be set to 0. The requisite of the current cycle year, so for the year 2024, making sure that the previous year has been closed. I showed you how to create a planning guide, a batch creation, how to print the first counting list, the control list, and the batch inventory list. After that, we did the entry of the first counting. Then we went to the second counting. We printed the list and we did a second counting of the items which were found in discrepancy. After that, we went to the entry of the second counting. I showed you all the printed documents which could be printed during these processes. For example, the addition list or the discrepancy report, which has to be handled in the report of survey in PAM. I showed you how to look at statistics, the outstanding count, and we did the final count with the batch number 999. After the entry of the final count, you will have completed the complete inventory cycle for the year 2024. Again, I strongly recommend to divide your warehouse in multiple batches to make the workload easier and to show that you are doing an inventory throughout the year.